Well, you know, back in the day, many days ago, many, uh, I really, not that many. I mean, uh, what I'm getting at is England was today's ISIS. And uh, they came to countries they didn't belong in. They pushed their religion. They pushed their monetary policy. And they were there to rape the countries of their natural resources and pay nothing for it, and have the workers be the citizens of those countries be their slaves and work for nothing, and second-class citizens to the almighty English. And they did it here, and that's why we celebrated yesterday, which was July 4th, 2026, 250 years since we allowed them to do it. And they did it in India, they did it in Hong Kong, they did it everywhere. Uh, you know, they're very arrogant sons of bitches when they do it, just like ISIS is. Now, they killed people, just like ISIS did. Uh, in those countries, they were not loved, like ISIS was not loved. Now, of course, ISIS is Muslim, and English is not. But that's about the only difference, uh, you know. And the Jews were ISIS of the time when they took Israel. And they were ISIS when they were trying to take Germany. And Germany stopped them. And Germany annihilated them to the best of their ability. Rightfully so. So, it's just about PR, it's about press. ISIS now has bad press. The English have good press. They're seen as good people. And they're not. They're not even close to good people. So, they're arrogant SOBs. And I am English. I'm 1/4 English. I'm 1/4 French. I'm 1/4 German. I'm 1/4 Norwegian. So, I'm 1/4 go to hell. you know. But, it's just, we think like ISIS is the first time it's ever been seen on the world stage, something like that. And it's so common, it's unreal. The French were ISIS when they took over Asia and Africa. And they took over Libya now. And we gave Libya to the French after we killed Gaddafi. So, it's better PR because the Libyans hate Americans and the French weren't as hated as much. So it's better to have the French run Libya than have the Americans run Libya, because it would have been led to civil war and uprising. And we run the French, so you gotta look at it that way too. Like we ran Iran. The Shah of Iran was ours. We put him there, and that's why we have such trouble with Iran, because the Shah was the worst leader of Iran and stole and robbed from the Iranian people, and he was there because of us. And that's why the Iranians don't like us. And there's other reasons they don't like us, but that was the focal point. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. So, I don't know. Uh, and we're now the new ISIS. We're the new ISIS in Iran. We're the new ISIS in Iraq. We're the new ISIS in Syria. And Venezuela. Venezuela is screwed. They should be very good, well off. I mean, I understand the horrors of the earthquake and all the damage and the loss of life, and I'm not discounting that in any way, but it was a natural disaster. It wasn't man-made. We didn't bomb those buildings to destruction. It was a natural earthquake, which hadn't happened in over 100 years. So, there's no one to blame for that. And all you can do is really do your best to recover from it and rebuild, and hopefully they'll rebuild buildings that can withstand a earthquake. Because the buildings they had obviously couldn't. And they have oil money, so they should be well off. They should be able to build their country back and build it like a Dubai, very nice and luxurious, and uplift the people. And they won't, because we're robbing them of their money, we're robbing them of their oil, and we're robbing them of their dignity. And in the name of giving them dignity, which is the joke of it all. And Yeltsin was good for Russia, and that's why we killed him and put Putin in place. And I know it didn't go down that we killed Yeltsin, but we did. And we would kill Putin if he was good for Russia too. The fact that Putin is bad for Russia, bad for the Russian people, is why we keep him there. Russia is very rich in oil. Putin is robbing all of the money from the oil and his cronies, and not sharing it with the people, because we don't want the people to be powerful in their own individual lives. We don't want another country to compete with. We can, it's kind of like if you see somebody on the football field that's a little better than you, you go for his knees. You try to chop at his knees and make him injured and less vulnerable, less competitive with you. And that's what we do with Russia, and that's what we do with all the countries, especially the oil countries, because they have something that we don't. Yes, we have oil, but our economy is not an oil-based economy like theirs are. Which is why we don't want Iran to have control of their oil and profit from their oil, because we see that they will be more powerful as an opponent if we allow them to do that. Now, the CIA, there's a CIA show on Paramount Plus. It's called The Agency, and that's part of the brainwashing and the manipulation and indoctrination of the United States people, that the CIA is good, and the CIA does things that are good for us. It's not good for us, it's good for them, and their interests, not our interests. Saddam didn't have weapons of mass destruction, did he? And all the things they said about Vietnam were not true. So the CIA lies on a continual basis. Remember, they had the buses that created WMDs, and we couldn't find the buses to take them out because they were mobile. It was all crap. They didn't exist, but they made it up. And the CIA just, and that's the problem with the agency. The agency movie or show or series sells the idea that they're good for us, they're on our side, And that's the brainwashing, that's the indoctrination, that's the manipulation. The truth is they're working for what's good for their interests and how they make money, which is selling drugs. The CIA is the biggest drug dealer on the planet. And there's a lot of money in drugs, and they like oil too. There's a lot of money in oil, and they control it. And if you don't, and believe me, the king of Saudi Arabia is only the king because he works with us. Otherwise, so, we're the ultimate ISIS. We're the ultimate ISIS. And we have good PR, so we're not seen that way, Al-Qaeda didn't do 9/11. We did. Our CIA did. Our NSA did. We did 9/11. And they'll never admit that, but we did, even though the evidence is there. Building 7 came down, and no plane hit it. It had no reason to come down, but it came down. So, go figure that, And the lives lost, well, they don't care. I don't care either. I worked on Wall Street for a brief period, and I found that a lot of people that worked on Wall Street were scumbags. There are a lot of dirtbags, and all they care about is money. And I'm not thankful the buildings came down and wiped them out, but I'm not sad either. Look at Ludwig. Ludwig survived Cantor Fitzgerald. Now he's an SOB on Trump's cabinet, and Ludwig is an SOB, and he knew that the planes were going to come into that building that day, and that's why he didn't go to work that day. So these are the kind of people you're mourning when you mourn 9/11. I mean, I'm not including the firefighters. I am including the police because I don't like police, but I'm not including the firefighters. They were good people. They were there to rescue people. They didn't know anything about the pre-plans to blow up the buildings and all the death charges that were already installed in the building before the planes hit. But, the government, they don't care about the firefighters. Even when they had the 9/11 fund, they tried to squash it. They didn't want to give money. They don't give a rat's ass about anything but themselves. You're talking about the most evil people on the planet, and, it's like a lot of you out there are trying to get people to like you, and you're looking at it, the people you're trying to get to like you are people that don't even like themselves. So how can you possibly expect them to like you? They don't like themselves. How can they like you? Trump doesn't like himself. Trump hates himself. But he makes everybody know it by making everybody miserable. And does a good job at it too. So, and his speech last night about, Kennedy made speeches and Eisenhower made speeches and Truman made speeches, and they replay those speeches all the time. Last night's speech, they'll never replay again. You'll have a hard time finding it on the internet alone. Because it was a Trump speech. It was a hateful speech. It wasn't an uplifting speech. And it was very narcissistic, and he's narcissistic in charge.